Good morning, Top War friends. We're going to look at the new Army hero Quily today. You're probably wondering, what kind of name is Quily? Well, let's take a look at the picture here. You can see it's a guy in a ghillie suit, and ghillie rhymes with Quily, so I've got a pretty good idea how the creative minds came up with this name. That's my guess. You can leave your guess in the comments. Moving on. The hero's name is Quily. He's got a preparation skill, which is an HP enhancement of 65% for all army units. The hero he most compares to is Bren because he's got magnetic pulse, he's got the same type of skill attack, and he's got the HP enhancement. So when you compare him to Bren, which by the way, those of you who don't know, Bren's been given away for free on newer servers, so you had to know they were going to look to try to provide substitutes for Bren fairly quickly. Bren has a 40% HP enhancement in the front two rows and an 80% HP enhancement in the back row. So you average that out, you get 40 plus 40 is 80, plus 80 is 160 divided by the three rows, and you're looking at about a 53% HP enhancement. Now, you got to adjust that a little bit with Bren, I think, because Bren only launches her skill attack from the first two rows. So because of that, the first two rows are more important. So that's probably more closer to 50% than it is to 53% because it's the first rows are more valuable with Bren because of the fact that that's where that skill attack launches from. Then, so the HP enhancement with Quily is significantly higher than it is with Bren. It's at least a 12% increase. It might be closer in reality, to 15 to 17 or something like that. The active skill for Quily is after every army unit attack, you do 3 skill attacks, randomly dealing 80% damage. So that's 3 times 80 is 240. Now Bren had 2 skill attacks that deal 120% damage, but only from the first 2 rows. So while the 240 was the same and hers was probably more focused because it's 2 of 120, here you're getting 3 of 80, it's only for the first 2 units, so you're totally missing out on 1/3 of the units too. So, potentially that's, if it's a 33% proc rate, that's 1 more time every round that Quily can proc. So that's a significant upgrade in and of itself. That your back row gets to do that. If you remember, that was Gypsy's level 5 skill, was that, part of that was that you got the back row to do the skill attack as well. It was big. The passive skill is 1 stack of 40% magnetic pulse to 2 enemy units. Bren has 1 stack of 30% magnetic pulse to 2 enemy units. So it's 10% more magnetic pulse. For those of you who've never used a magnetic pulse hero or rune before, magnetic pulse is very similar to ignition, but it's kind of like delayed ignition or reverse ignition, because ignition before the unit launches its attack does the damage. Magnetic pulse waits until after the unit does its attack to do its damage. The other difference there, though, is that if you both have, let's say, 1 unit left and your opponent, you have magnetic pulse on your opponent's last unit, and they shoot you and they kill you, if your magnetic pulse kills them, you technically win the fight still. So, little known fact, I guess, because it doesn't happen that often, but small bonus that way too. Nonetheless, it's 10% more magnetic pulse per each one, so that's 20% over those 2 units that it applies to. So without any skills, your buddy Quily in the ghillie here is a nice upgrade over Bren because the back row can now launch the active skill, which does similar damage, albeit a little more spread out. You have an increased magnetic pulse damage, and your HP enhancement is higher. All good things. Level 3 skill is the exact same for both. It's a attack boost of 30% when the hero participates in the battle. So no need to worry about that. The level 5 skill for Quily is one more magnetic pulse, and the effect is improved to 60%. So I'm assuming that's 3 units now that are affected by the magnetic pulse, but for 60%. So that's 180% magnetic pulse total. At Bren at level 5, it was one more magnetic pulse and one more skill attack. So the magnetic pulse went up to 3 of 30, so it was only 90, but she did get one more skill effect attack, which was 120% more to, you know, so that was nice. At level 5, the way I look at that is that it might bridge the gap some on the active skill because Bren gets an extra attack. But again, remember her attack only launches from the first 2 rows, while, my buddy Quilly and the Quilly here will launch it from all 3 rows. So that's a nice little boost for him. And then his magnetic pulse is higher. I think at level 5, Bryn may be a little closer to Quilly than she was without any skill, but I still think Quilly's got a nice upgrade because of that extra row that can launch the attack, and his magnetic pulse being significantly better. At level 7, he increases his magnetic pulse by 1 again, and the damage of the active skill increases by 50%. So now your active skill, instead of doing 80%, does 130% to 3 units. So that's 390. Bren is 3 at 120. So because she does not get another active skill in level 7, she just gets her magnetic pulse increased by 1, and it's up to 60% damage. So at level 7, the magnetic pulse for both is the same. It's 4 magnetic pulses at 60% each. But Quilly's attack is 3, a skill attack is 3 attacks, doing 130 each for 390 from all 3 rows, while Bren's is 3 doing 120 each from the first 2 rows. So not only does Quilly's attack do more damage at level 7, but you add an extra row that can do that damage. The magnetic pulse is exactly the same, and his HP enhancement, like we talked about earlier, is higher. So I don't think it's much of a question that Quilly's an upgrade over Bren. I think at 7, the upgrade is sizable. Without an exclusive skill, it's pretty sizable. At 5, it's still a noticeable upgrade, but it might be a little less than it is at 7 and without the exclusive skill. But either way, I would recommend army players who use the magnetic pulse march. I think Quily would go well with, say, Nell, If you don't have an Indestruct hero, try something with Nell, Asuka, and Quily. It might be like a high impact march there. Technically, you could do something with, again, if you don't have an Indestruct hero, you could do something with Quily and Bren together and just rely on the fact that you're going to put a lot of magnetic pulse on people. The only downside there could be magnetic pulse does have a maximum that you can only put 5 on one unit at one time. So you would need somebody to trigger those fairly quickly, like Asuka or Nell, to, get rid of them so that you don't not use some of your ability because it can't stack any further. Anyhow, I've talked for long enough about Quily and the Quilly. We'll see what the testing shows, but on paper, he looks like a nice upgrade over Bren. So I recommend checking him out. And, I also recommend everybody push the like button and the subscribe button. Y'all have fun playing Top War. Cookie out.